We're all shaken, broken, torn. We're walking around in a fog the last week. Clouds have been just surrounding us, confusion, uncertainty, tears, crying, shaken. The tragedy of Meron just 1 week ago has left us bereft, and with such questions and difficulties, trying to understand, to figure out. But slowly, we begin to understand and to realize we can't figure anything out. But instead of asking the question why, we need to understand what we can do. Where do we go from here? How do we continue when there's such pain and suffering that's surrounding us? I find myself regularly looking at the news and trying to understand the lives of the Niftarim, watching Hesped after Hesped, reading more and more about the people and understanding what they went through and trying to figure out what exactly occurred. But there are three reactions that I like to share, three things that I think each of us can do to relate to the tragedy, to understand what we are able to do and how to move on. The first must be to be Nocebol im Chavero, to feel the pain and suffering of 45 families who have lost a father, a son, and a husband. You read the stories, they're heart-wrenching. A family and three families that have lost two sons. Families that have been left without children, so bitterly and so difficult. Who would have imagined as they sent them away to a great simcha, the simcha of Rashbi, the simcha of being in Meron, and then to come back and even not to come back. And not only have those families been affected, but tens and hundreds of others who are witness to the event, who are thinking about it, who are so troubled. We have to feel the pain of those families, to be nosei be'ol im chavero. The last few days I've been saying the words Baruch Atah Hashem Mechayeh Hamesim with a different kavana. Kadosh Baruch Hu, you will resurrect the dead. That is something we can do for the families, that they should be reunited with their loved ones soon, speedily. Mechayeh Hamesim Kadosh Baruch Hu Birachamim Rabim, with such mercy and care. If each of us would say those words and think about those 45 mishpachas, and if each of those 45 mishpachas would know that we're having kavana in the brach of Mechayeh Hamesim 3 times a day, it would bring enormous nechama to those families to know that there are tens, hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people saying the brach of Mechayeh Hamesim, with such kavanah, thinking about them, that they should be reunited with their sons, with their fathers, and with their husbands. And we should say the words Acheinu kol beis Yisrael hanasunim batzara v'ashivya homdim bein bayam uvein bayabash hamakim yirachem aleihem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu shev rachmanas on these families. V'yotzei mitzara lirvacha me'afeila leora u'mishibu legeula. HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring these families the nechama that they need. Hamakim yirachem aleihem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring them a nechama, but to think about these families and to what they're going through, their challenges and their suffering, that their lives will never ever be the same. What that means to lose a son, what that means to lose a husband, what that means to lose a father. A life will never be the same. The family system will never be the same. We have to think about that, contemplate that, and allow that to connect to them. And those families will feel that. The Ava Rabba of Tana, the Kirva of Klali, so the love that we have when such a tragedy occurs, when such a tragedy happens, it's not their problem, it's our problem. And all of Klali, so collectively the tears will add up in a bucket until it overflows, and a Kadosh Baruch Hu will say, I'm prepared for the Tchiyah. I'm prepared for Tchiyas HaMeis. I'm prepared to take care of you, of them, and of everybody. So we must be Nosei Ba'olim Chaver. We have to feel that pain. We have to feel with our heart, with our mind, with our soul, with our body, with our entire being, and to say the brach of Mechayeh Mesim now more than ever with such kavana. And this difficulty, this challenge has been compounded after the year of death that we've been so subsumed by. And the death rate continues, and we continue hearing about the stories. But let's focus on Tchiyas HaMesim, Mechayeh Hamesim. Kadosh Baruch Hu bring them back and bring us to a life of Mashiach. But there's more than that. There has to be more than that. We know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu and gives us an insight into how to deal with suffering and Jewish suffering. And when Moshe Rabbeinu asks HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want to see you, I want to be and understand you, like the Gemara says in Maseches Brachos, you want to understand Tzadik V'Ralo, Rasha V'Tovla, why do good things happen to bad people? Explain that to me, said Moshe Rabbeinu to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In Parshas Kisi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu responds and says, V'ra'isas achorai, upanai lo yero, you will see me from behind and you won't see my face. V'ra'isas achorai, you'll see my back. And Rashi says that Moshe Rabbeinu saw the kesher shel tefillin of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Upanai, the front of my face, my pinim, That you won't see. And the Chassam Sofer explains in his drashos what that means is that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu was responding to Moshe Rabbeinu, you want to understand Tzaddik Ralo, you never will. V'ra'isas achora, you'll understand limafreya later on in the future, acharai, afterward. Upanai, in the real time, live, beforehand, I can't explain to you why I do what I do. V'ra'isas achora, says the Chassam Sofer, later on in the future, years down the line, I'll be able to reveal everything to you. V'ra'isas achora, you'll see and understand why I did what I did. Limafreya, retroactively. Achorai, upanai, but in the front, right now, I can't explain that to you. You don't have the ability to understand that, Moshe, why I do what I do, and why I do the things that I do, and we just experienced the Midas Hadin. We just experienced an extreme justice of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu raised his voice, he screamed, he entered our world in the most dramatic way, in a painful way. We can't understand. V'ra'isas achorai, later on, one day we'll understand, we'll appreciate. Upanai lo yero, we're not going to understand now. But we have to be believers and to look forward. We have to be able to look to the future. We have to understand that there's a message in HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us something, and each of us have to find what it is. But ra'isas achorai, we can't get it now. Upanai lo yero. And this is really the need of Reb Shimon ben Yochai, the ability to look to the future. The Gemara says in Masechah Shabbos, Daf Kuf Lamed Chesem Beis, Tanu Rabbanon, Kishenichnusu Rabboseinu leKerem b'Yavne, the rabbis entered the vineyard in Yavne, Kerem b'Yavne. Amru, the rabbis got together and they said, Asida Torah shetishtakach miYisrael. They looked in the Nevi'im, they looked in the Ksuvim, they saw what was happening, such death and desolation, such challenges and difficulties physically, spiritually. Klal Yisrael was in a very bad situation. Asida Torah shetishtakach miYisrael. Klal Yisrael can't handle, they're not going to manage, they're not going to be able to survive. The Psukim indicate as such, and the Gemara goes on and darshans with the different Rabbanim, how they darshan the Psukim. However, Tanya, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai raised his voice, he stood up. Omer, Chas v'shalom shetishtachach Torah miYisrael. Chas v'shalom, the Torah will be never erased. It will never be forlorn. It will never be forgotten from Yisrael. Shenemar ki lo sishkach mipi zaro. The Torah will be never lost. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will continue to teach, and Klal Yisrael will continue to learn. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai was able to look to the future and look in difficulties and look at disaster and look at desolation and look at trouble and look at difficulties and be able to say it's going to be different. We have to look to the future, the ability to get past the challenges, the suffering, and the difficulty. And that's what Reb Shimon ben Yochai taught us. And Reb Shimon ben Yochai got that from his Rebbe, Rabbi Akiva. After Rabbi Akiva lost his 24,000 Talmidim, the Gemara says, Nichnesu, he went, L'Rabboseinu Shebadarm, he traveled to the south. And he found 5 new Talmidim, 5 new students. And from there he built and he started again. But it's not that Rabbi Akiva forgot the 24,000 Talmidim. He knew them very well, name by name, each and every single one. But because he was so connected to them, he was able to look to the future. And that's what we have to do. We can never lose sight of what occurred. We can never forget the 45 names and the 45 families and the hundreds that have been affected. But from that we will build. From the loss, from the challenge, from the difficulty, we will be able to look forward. That's what Reb Shimon ben Yochai did. That's what Rabbi Akiva did, and that's what we must do. And finally, we need to think that when something like this happens, the Gemara says in Masechah Shabbos, Echad min hachabura shemes, yidagul kol bnei hachabura. If one member of a group dies, the entire group has to be nervous because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is speaking very, very seriously. Echad min hames, yidagul kol bnei hachabura. Kol bnei hachabura, we are all members of this challenge, of this loss, of this difficulty, of this death sentence. We are all part of Achenu kol bnei Yisrael. We've all been impacted and affected. Every single tzibur, every single person, Israeli and American, everybody Argentinian has been affected by this tragedy. Everybody's thinking about it. It's talking to us. To each and every single one of us, we all have to change. We all have to think and wonder on our own. How am I living my life? What am I doing? Where are areas that I could be better? Ben Adam lechaver, I could be nicer, I could be kinder, I could think about other people more. Ben Adam lemakom, I could concentrate, I could think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu more. I could connect to people more, connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, every person lefi dargaso. But an event like this has to reshape our thinking, has to reshape what we do, how we live, how we go through our day. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should send b'schus our actions, b'schus our avodah, b'schus our taking this so seriously. Ve'achayitein elibo, that the Kadosh Baruch Hu should send such a nechama and such rachamim v'shalom to these families. They should be able to find wholeness, completion. They should be able to continue to see simcha and yeshuos in their lives and the lives of their families and simchas. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu should send them, us and all of Klal Yisrael, the ultimate Geula, the ultimate Kabbalah Satorah, reuniting together with Kadosh Baruch Hu, b'simcha v'sason b'mheira v'yameinu. Amen. Wishing everybody a wonderful Shabbos.